questions, and if you don't mind, just introducing yourself this first time or two as we get to know faces. Everyone's good to go? Coach, ready when you are, sir.
First off, obviously, my name's Blake Baker, defensive coordinator. Extremely excited to be here. I think it's been fast and furious these last couple weeks, but when I look at our talent level and our want to, I think we have a chance on defense. So, obviously, I've known Coach Drink for a while, and just grateful and blessed for the opportunity to be here and ready to get to work.
Blake gave the arm into with Power Mizzou. Can you take us through the process of getting here? And when you originally took the job, did you have some idea that something with Coach Wilkes could be in the works, or were you thinking just safeties coach and go from there?
Yeah, so when I first got here, no, it was all about coming to, and I'd had several talks with Coach Wilkes before, and just coming to be, a set of eyes and ears for him and coach the safeties and do the best job possible. So it wasn't a preconceived deal as far as getting this promotion. Now, when Coach Wilkes left, Coach Drink did his due diligence as far as myself and other candidates out there, and landed on me being the best guy. So it just kind of came to fruition organically, but it wasn't something that was pre-planned by any stretch of the imagination.
Blake, Dave, and I are taking most closest bet. Can you tell us just a little bit about what your kind of plans are for this system, what you like to do, how much carryover there'll be from what these guys did last year?
That's a good question. Right now, we're really trying to figure all that out. We do want to try to carry over as much as possible from a terminology standpoint. Sometimes we're able to do that very easily, and sometimes it just doesn't maybe mesh with kind of what we've done in the past from a terminology standpoint. I do think we have a great staff, and so this is going to be the 2022 Missouri defense. Obviously, I have a background with some really good defensive coaches, and I've been a coordinator for 6 years and have some ideas of what we want to be. Something that we will definitely pride ourselves on is being an attacking defense that's really good at tackling the ball carrier. So those are two things that we'll definitely hang our hat on, but how we get there, it's to be determined. And a lot of that comes down to personnel as well. This spring is not about scheme, it's about individual player development. And that's something that we got to figure out, give our guys something and make sure that they can do it. If not, we got to kind of adapt to what our personnel is able to do. So as far as final scheme or who exactly we're going to be, that we probably won't know until the end of fall camp, to be honest with you.
Obviously, you have a co-defensive coordinator with DJ Smith. What is it, coming into a new program, having a guy like that who's been here to lean on, kind of take me through that and how much of a help he's been?
He's been a tremendous help. He's a bright young coach. The one thing that he's really helped bridge the gap on is some of the terminology. I think he had a really good feel of the big picture last year, so he's been able to help with that. And, just different ideas. Like I said, this is going to be the 2022 Missouri defense. This isn't Blake Baker's defense, and I do have a lot of trust and a lot of faith in a short period of time of the guys in our room of being able to kind of bridge some of the stuff they did last year like we just talked about. But he's been a tremendous help. He's a heck of a guy. He's a good ball coach. I like DJ a lot. He's been very helpful in that room.
From your time at Miami as defensive coordinator and then with LSU, just what are the biggest things you learned from those jobs? What do you take from that carry over into being defensive coordinator?
That's a good question. I think the biggest thing I learned is at the end of the day there has to be one voice. Can't have too many chiefs per se. That's one thing that I've really taken with me. I learned a ton last year at LSU. I think sitting back, being a coordinator for 6 years and kind of now sitting in the number 2 chair was tremendous for me from a big picture standpoint. Learned a lot, from an upfront standpoint from Coach Ed Orgeron. He's a tremendous defensive line coach and just different run game ideas, which I think we'll be able to implement here. But more so than anything is probably just having that year away from sitting in a chair and kind of seeing a big picture of what I would have done differently at my previous 2 stops as a coordinator. There's been a lot of good stuff in last year at LSU.
Coach Ben Arnett, TV. You mentioned 1-2 a minute ago. This is something that a lot of the players have talked about. Kind of give us an idea of that. Is there something to prove by from this defense right now coming off of last year? How do you kind of receive that?
Yeah, I think so. I told them we're really not going to talk about last year. I wasn't here. I don't know what they were taught. Everyone starts with a clean slate. But when I say want to, the thing that's really stood out to me here has been the attention to detail, their note taking, the questions that they ask in meetings. It's been impressive. But I think, opening the door and letting it be open competition. Anytime I take a new job, I generally look at 8 to 12 plays of a guy from a point of attack standpoint. I don't know what they're being taught, but just from an athleticism standpoint. And I do that so I don't have any preconceived notions or opinions. And I told some of the defensive guys that were on staff last year, I said, I don't want to hear about what our opinions of these guys were last year. Otherwise, we're doing them a disservice, as a new defense. So when I say want to, like I said, it's been more of the Saturdays you come up here, they're working extra. I mean, it's been impressive as far as their want to from that standpoint.
Coach, Jackson, a little bit on the Missouri. You talked a little bit about kind of the need to carry over some of the Coach Wilkes' terminology. How do you kind of balance the need for continuity after the defense kind of been strong last year with the need to run with what you're comfortable with?
I think it's a fine line. I think that's where Coach Smith's been tremendous for me. At the end of the day, there's 11 guys. There's only so much you can do on defense, right? So I think from like I said, I don't know exactly what will be from a schematic standpoint. I do think as much as we can group things in so not every guy on the defense is learning a new word. It's easier for me to adapt to a word, than 100 or 50 guys learning a new word, if that makes sense. But there's some things, like I said, within the scheme that have kind of been compartmentalized over the years. I think that's something that we've done over time to try to make it easier for the kids to learn. So there's been some give and take from that standpoint. Does that make sense?
Coach Mitchell Forty from Power Mizzou. I know, especially in the back end, there's a lot of guys out there this spring who hadn't necessarily been out there in the past. Guys who had played or out with injuries. What are kind of the pros and cons that you've got? Like you said, guys starting with a new slate and players who are gaining experience, but also guys who maybe have been higher on the depth chart in the past, not out there to kind of start learning, working with you in the defense.
Yeah, I think the pros is obviously that these guys that haven't played a lot of ball are now getting more reps than they probably ever bargained for. The negative is, like you said, the guys that have played ball maybe learning a different technique from myself or Coach Pogue or, maybe a different scheme altogether. So that's the negative is those guys aren't out there. And we're able to get them in some walkthrough settings, but, it's nothing compared to full speed. I do believe you have to play the game at full speed to get better at it. So the pros are the guys that are out there getting reps are getting a ton of reps and they're going to improve. And at the end of the day, you're hoping to see a more competitive depth chart, by the end of spring going into fall camp is the biggest pro.
Coach, Max Baker with the Post-Dispatch. I guess some players last week talked about how some of their early season struggles were because they were still kind of getting used to the new scheme with the new defensive coordinator. And I know you talked about sort of not worrying about that right now. How do you sort of not make sure that doesn't happen again?
I think the proof's in the pudding. I think when you look at what this scheme's done in the first year, like I said, we try to, over the years, make it very, very simple. When you look at, I can go back to, what was it, 2011, I think we finished, as a graduate assistant learning the scheme, finished 13th in the country on defense. When we brought it to Louisiana Tech in 2014, we led the country in turnovers, TFLs, interceptions, a ton of stats. Then same thing whenever we got to Miami with it. So I think it's a very user-friendly scheme from that standpoint. Like I said, I don't know exactly, and it's not comparing anything to last year. Please don't take it that way. But I do think when you look at this scheme, the proof has been in the pudding. When you look at the first year it's installed, it's been pretty successful.
Just the logistics. Coach Pogue is working with cornerbacks, so how do you kind of split up your time between doing the whole thing and still working individually with safety?
Yeah, I think that's always come with the territory. The biggest thing is trying to probably really trying to. I do think you have to work cohesively as an entire unit, and so far right now we've just been strictly corners and strictly safeties as far as the meeting room. Maybe some individual drills we'll get together, but there will be a point in time where we'll have to start meeting together as a back end. But like I said, it's been more about individual player development. Once we get more into the scheme and how we all work together, there will be times where we'll have to get together as a back five.
Coach Nate Burner from KOMU Sports. You talked a little bit earlier about having a one chief voice, and you're not the lead coach in their first year here. Coach Peoples, Coach Bo. How do you try to take that role as a leader to, get a group that might not be very familiar with each other? What are the steps you guys are taking this spring to, improve that chemistry from a coaching staff standpoint?
Yeah, it's a lot of it just comes from time spent together. Trust to me is built through time and consistency, and it's been cool. Like I said, it's only been a couple weeks, but I think as a defensive staff, from a trust and a consistency and a just gelling together, I think we've come a far way in a short period of time. So I think that'll just come over time. I think that'll come over time as we see what each other's strengths or weaknesses is. The first thing I told the guys when I come in there is there does have to be one voice at the end of the day, but by no means am I a dictator. And that's why I keep saying this is a 2022 Missouri defense. There's 1,000 ways to skin a cat, so I want to hear what their ideas, what they've done in the past, how maybe something has helped them over the years, and we'll gel it all together.
What stood out the first time you worked with Eli back at Arkansas State? And I know you're on the opposite side of the ball, but anything that stood out at the time? And also, I think you played a game here.
I played a couple games here, when I was at G. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Any memories of those games and your early relationship with Eli?
The first thing that stands out to me with Eli, dating back to Arkansas State, is he's extremely, extremely smart. Extremely smart and extremely hardworking. He was always the first guy. I remember he had the first or second office when you walked into the hallway, and he would be there before everybody. He'd have his Christian music going, and on that point, he the one thing that I always enjoyed about him is he makes you a better man. From a father figure, from just being an overall better guy. So. Those are the guys you want to surround yourself with, and that's why we've stayed in touch, throughout this entire time. Yeah, I don't have great memories. I think I'm 1-1 here, and y'all probably won't have a good memory. When I was a graduate assistant at Texas, we lost our starting running back to an ACL, and y'all lost y'all starting running back to an ACL, so that's not a good memory, right? And then we obviously got beat when I was at Arkansas State, so excited to be on the home sideline, I can tell you that much. I always thought the crowd here was really good. The one thing that stood out to me was their passion. I thought the fan base was always very passionate when you came up here. That stood out to me both times I came up here. Regardless of if I was at Texas or Arkansas State, the stands were full.
Chris Prudenti, I'm a Columbia Tribune. Just when you talk about the lessons that you've learned and some of the experiences you had, how have you grown specifically as a play caller coming into this position?
What was the second part? I'm sorry. How have I grown?
Yeah, how have you grown, learned, improved as a play caller coming into this position?
Yeah, I think more so than anything has probably tried to be, as you grow and you get older, when I was a young coordinator, you probably want to be the hot name and have all these guru calls and the perfect call. And to me, what I've learned over these few years is, and you always heard old coaches say it when I was a young coach, but like fundamentals win you games. When you talk about tackling, talking about getting off blocks, and that's something that's really hit me between the eyes, I would say, in the last couple of years, is I don't have to have the most exotic third down package or the best play call in this certain situation. As long as as long as the kids can execute it and be fundamentally sound, we got a lot better shot than trying to come up with the perfect play call or the most exotic pressure. So that's something that really has stuck with me over the last couple of years.
You mentioned fundamentals. That was something that was brought up a lot last season. That kind of rooted some of the issues. How do you go about helping players develop those and get better executing during the spring period?
The big thing is filming their doing individual drills. Like right now, for instance, we have 25 minutes for an individual period. a lot of places might break that up and say, okay, we're going to spend 12 minutes doing individual, but then 12 minutes we got to get together as a back seven and match up these routes, whatever the case may be, where right now all 25 minutes are being dedicated strictly to individual. Now once we've filmed the individual, now we go back and we watch it as a staff. First off, how does this correlate to what we're about to go do on the field? And then secondly, what do we need to do to get better at this drill? And then thirdly, now we watch it with the players and kind of explain to them what we see, why we're doing this drill, and what we need to get better at within the drill. That's how you get better fundamentally to me. And, I think as coaches, a lot of times you want to install. And like to your point, I think we can get 1,000 times better fundamentally right now.
Coach Baker, you got a returning captain on defense in Martez Ivey. What's your relationship with him right now? How is he and any other of the returning starters kind of help you and the other new coaches along, like getting used to Mizzou?
Yeah, I think Martez and I have a great relationship. he stood out to me as far as his leadership, even though he has been banged up. A lot of guys will kind of sit back when they're in the same shoes that he's in, and he's really stood out from a positive leadership standpoint. Second thing that stands out to me is how smart he is. Like, you sit in a meeting and he's played a lot of ball, obviously, but there's still guys that have played a lot of ball that maybe struggle to learn concepts. He does a really good job picking that up. The biggest thing that I've really kind of took from him is, as far as learning Missouri and everything, is kind of just watching to see how, like I said, I don't want to have any preconceived opinions. So I've kind of just been sitting back and watching and observing how guys interact with each other, how we celebrate after a play, how we come together as a defense when a bad play happens, and kind of still in the observation standpoint from there.
Kevin Ryans with KRSCG 13. And you mentioned before about starting a clean slate. A lot of the players that we spoke to were excited about how they finished last year. So how much does that help you in trying to add on to that confidence for those players who are carrying over from last year's team this year?
Yeah, I think it's huge. I think it's huge from a confidence standpoint when you finish strong. The thing that, like I said, I wasn't here last year, but it shows that our guys have grit. It shows that they have a backbone if things weren't going so well for the first 8 games and we're able to finish the last 4 games strong or whatever the case may be. It shows that they're not quitters. And to me, if they work hard, and we get better fundamentally, like I said, I think the talent level's there. I think we have a chance. So, but yeah, anytime you finish a year strong, that's why to me it's always so important to win a bowl game if you can. If you finish with a good taste in your mouth, you usually have a little bit of different morale going into next season. So, yeah, I think it's huge for their morale and for their confidence leading up into this next season.
Anything else for Coach Baker?
Like who do you look at as like your coaching mentors, like the stuff you learned about from how you most influential?
I think you'd probably start with Manny Diaz, Will Muschamp, Mac Brown, Skip Holtz. Skip Holtz from a big picture, 30,000 feet above the air, spending 5 years with him. Him and Coach Brown probably more so than as far as a big picture. As far as defensive football, I would say Will Muschamp and Manny Diaz.